Today's lesson is on perimeter problems. Perimeter is defined as the distance around a figure. So if we start in the top left corner, we would be crossing the width, the length, another width, and another length to get back to where we started. It's the same thing with a triangle. If we start at the top corner, we need to go down to the bottom, over to the side, and back to where we started. For rectangles, you just need to add up both lengths and both widths, and for a triangle, you're going to add up all three sides. A review from last year, an isosceles triangle, you have two sides that are congruent. Oftentimes, you will see two little slash marks to indicate that those are the congruent sides. If you forgot what the word congruent means, it just means that the two parts have the exact same measure. The steps are going to be to draw a picture, to label it, and then to go ahead, define your variable, write the equation, and solve. Let's take a look at a rectangle question. The length of a rectangle measures 5 times its width. If the perimeter is 96 feet, find the length and the width. Well, if it says the length of a rectangle measures 5 times its width, we don't know what the width is. That's going to be our x. So x will be our width. The length says 5 times its width, so we're going to multiply that by 5 on the top and also on the bottom. To set up the equation for the perimeter of a rectangle, we just need to add up all the sides. 5x plus x is 6x. 6x plus another 5x gives you 11x, and 11x plus another x gives you 12x. So the perimeter is going to be 12x equals 96. But where did the 96 come from? It comes from the problem where it tells you what the perimeter is. How do we solve for x? We just divide both sides by 12, and then we get an x value of 8. But what is the 8? That's where it helps to have your variable fully defined. If we look back at how we defined our variable, 8 is your width. To get our length, we're going to substitute 8 in for x. 5 times 8 gives us 40. So for our answer, we are going to state that the width is 8 feet and our length is 40 feet. Let's take a look at a triangle question. The problem says the length of the sides of a triangle are represented by 3 consecutive even integers. If the perimeter of the triangle is 426 feet, find the lengths of the sides. Something I like to do is on the inside just to label the sides 1, 2, and 3, so I have a way to tell which side is which. It's not something you have to do. So if it says the sides are 3 consecutive even integers, that means our first side is going to be x. Consecutive even means we need to add 2, so we have x plus 2, and then for this third side we will have x plus 4. To define the variable though, we need to make sure we say x is the first side, x plus 2 is our second side, and x plus 4 is our third side. To set up the equation, remember the perimeter for a triangle is just to add up all the sides together. So x and x and x together make 3x. 2 plus 4 gives us 6. And then we need to figure out what to set it equal to. In the problem, it tells us the perimeter is 426 feet. So we're going to set this equation equal to 426. To get x by itself, we're going to subtract 6 from both sides. To get 3x equals 420. And then we'll divide by 3 to get an x value of 140. To get the other sides, we're going to just plug in the variable for x. 140 plus 2 is 142, and 140 plus 4 gives us 144. It is okay on triangles to just list it as the sides when you state your answer. So the sides are 140 feet, 142 feet, and 144 feet. If you're concerned about checking your work, you can just add the sides together in a calculator. When you add them together, you should get the total of 426 feet. Let's try another triangle problem. This one's a little bit harder. It says the second side of a triangle is 1 more than 3 times the first. The third side is twice the second side. If the perimeter of the triangle is 183 yards, find the length of each side. The first thing I'm going to do is label our sides 1, 2, and 3. And then we have to go back to the problem. So it says the second side is 1 more than 3 times the first. But we don't know how much the first side is. So we're going to make that our x. To reread it, it says the second side is 1 more than, that means we have something plus 1, then 3 times the first. If the first is x, 3 times x gives us 3x. The next part says the third side is twice the second side. Well, the second side is 3x plus 1. Twice means multiply by 2. It's very important to make sure we have parentheses around this, because the 2 doesn't just multiply the 3x, it multiplies the entire side. I do think it's easier to pre-distribute this. If we multiply 2 times 3x, that gives us 6x, and 2 times 1 gives us 2, which means the simplified side 3 is 6x plus 2. The second side gives us 3x plus 1, and our first side is just x. So we're going to define x as the first side, 3x plus 1 as our second side, and 6x plus 2 as our third side. To find the perimeter of a triangle, we're just going to add up all the sides. X plus 3x gives us 4x, plus 6x gives us 10x. 1 plus 2 gives us 3, and if we look back at the problem, it tells us that the perimeter is 183 yards. Now we have to isolate x. We're going to subtract 3 from both sides to get 10x equals 180, and we're going to divide both sides by 10 to get x equals 18. We're going to use how we defined our variable in order to find the missing sides. If 18 is the first side, we have to do 3 times 18 plus 1. 3 times 18 gives us 54, plus 1 gives us 55. Now we're going to plug it in for 6x plus 2. We have 6 times 18 plus 2. 6 times 18 gives us 108, plus 2 gives us 110. If you want to check your work, you can add the 18, the 55, and the 110 together, and it should give you 183 if you solved it correctly. To state our answer, we will say the sides are 18 yards, 55 yards, and 110 yards. Why don't you go ahead and hit the pause button and see if you can set up the next problem by yourself. Okay, the last example. The width of the rectangle exceeds the length by 11 inches. If the perimeter measures 138 inches, find the measure of the length and width. The word exceed means plus. So if we set the x to be the length, the width ends up being x plus 11. X plus x plus x plus x gives us 4x. 11 plus 11 gives us 22, equals 138. If we subtract 22 from both sides, we're going to get 4x equals 116. And if you divide by 4, you're going to get 29. One of the questions that came up in class was, is it okay to have 11 plus x instead? And the answer to that is yes, because addition's commutative. Where you have to be careful is if it's subtraction, because if it says less than, you need to make sure you have x minus 11 instead, because it will change your answer. To plug back in, if 29 is the length, to find the width, we will have 29 plus 11, and that gives us 40. So for our answer, we will say the length is 29 inches and the width is 40 inches. See how the homework goes, and we're going to check it together in class.